Number 6. Transformers. It's no wonder that one of the best marketing ideas of all time was also one of the best animated shows of all time. Again, kind of tailoring to every boy's indulgent fantasies, Transformers combined cool, kick-ass vehicles with giant alien robots. The show is about a war between the Autobots led by Optimus Prime and the Decepticons led by Megatron. Yeah, okay, it sounds pretty retarded, but it gave us exactly what we wanted, transforming robots being the crap out of each other. The great thing about this show is how creative they got with all these different robots. I mean, I know they made up half of these characters just to sell more toys, but the possibilities for these things were just endless. You had trucks, you had bikes, you had tanks, you had guns, you had tape players. Well, okay, that's a little lame, but at the time it was pretty cool. Transformers, hell, it just kicked ass. Number 5. The Tick. With all the superhero shows out there, this was the satire that handled the ludicrous nature of the genre the best. The show was about a big blue man who literally comes out of nowhere to fight crime. Nobody knows who he is or where he came from, including him. All he knows is that he wants to fight crime and shout horrible catchphrases. Evildoers, eat my justice! He has a simple mind and very little intelligence, but luckily his neurotic psychic Arthur is there to keep him in line. It was a great show because it did such a good job mocking what most kids were growing up with at the time. In the show, they didn't have a secret crime-solving lair, they have an apartment that can barely hold 2. The supervillains aren't always rich, misunderstood madmen. Sometimes they're just children making death rays in their tree houses. Put the moon back, demon waif! Make me. And the heroes don't always shout good catchphrases. Sometimes they just shout... Spoon? Okay, well maybe it didn't all make sense, but this strange blend of surreality and reality made the show so enjoyable to watch. Written half the time more for adults as opposed to kids. Granted, the animation wasn't always top-notch, but it made up for it with its great writing and bizarre sense of humor. The Tick. We are a justice sandwich! No toppings necessary! What he said. Number 4. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Looking back, I realize this is the stupidest idea in the entire world. I mean, just listen to the title. What lobotomized monkey came up with that? I mean, it doesn't even seem real. It seems like a satire of another idea. But hey, it took the world by storm, me included. Why? Because it had action, big animals, and of course, a great sense of humor. I mean, they had Uncle Phil's The Shredder for crying out loud. I want this city to grovel at my feet now! I want all these freeloading parasites out of here! I think what made this show so popular is that it was combining two things that kids love. Animals and action scenes. Throw in some outdated catchphrases like, really righteous! And you have a show that's destined to be a hit. I think what really shocks me about this show is that it actually worked twice. I mean, they released the show again recently, and it actually became a hit. So much so that they even made another movie based on it. I don't know who came up with this idea or how. Well, okay, maybe I do know how, but it doesn't matter. This show was a ton of fun, combining everything that kids loved at the time. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, an idea so stupid, it has to be good. Number 3. X-Men. From one set of mutants to another, X-Men was the comic book show that every kid could enjoy. Why? Because it had a million characters to choose from. Unlike superhero shows like Superman or Spider-Man, X-Men had a huge cast of main characters. So if you didn't like one main character, you had another you could watch. And if you didn't like that character, you could watch somebody else. On top of that, it dealt with an issue that a lot of kids know too well: prejudice. Every kid has to go through a little bit of being made fun of, and if you look different or acted different, chances are you probably got a lot of it. And X-Men was all about that. People who are ridiculed and criticized simply because they were born different. It showed us how to live with our gifts, and how not to hide what makes us different, but to embrace them. And of course it had some kick-ass action and supermodels and spandex. That always helps too. X-Men gave us a ton of characters that we won't soon be forgetting. Each one with their own backstory and psychological issues. It was interesting, it was fun, and it knew how to keep us glued to the tube. X-Men, the perfect show to sink your claws into. Number 2. Animaniacs. I've never seen a show that came so close to capturing the spirit of the original Warner Brothers cartoons like this one. Yeah, Tiny Toons might have started this fad, but it was Animaniacs that perfected it, with writing that could entertain both children and adults alike. Our generation didn't grow up with shows like Carol Burnett or Laughing, so this is the closest thing to a variety show we had, combining great songs, lovable characters, and ingenious comedic writing. The characters in this show seemed so real that they practically leaped off the screen. Characters like the Warners, Slappy Squirrel, and Pinky and the Brain were all hilarious constructs that knew how to be likable as well as funny. It not only did a good job of making us laugh, but also educated us every once in a while, and actually made it fun. That's really hard to do.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Indianapolis.
I know now forever that Baton Rouge is the capital of Louisiana. The rest I don't know, but it is one of those kids shows that I can still watch as an adult and still totally enjoy. It has an energy and a sophistication that very few other shows had, mostly because producer Steven Spielberg gave a lot of freedom on the show. It was also said that he was present for the majority of the show's production, proving once again that I think he makes a much better producer than he does a director. Private Ryan is overrated! But I digress. Animaniacs was one of those rare shows that allowed a lot of freedom that really paid off. To put it short, it was pure animated gold. And the #1 animated nostalgic TV show is Batman, the animated series. This is the show that changed everything. It took chances, it took a new look, and it took its audience seriously. At a time when most action cartoons looked like G.I. Joe or X-Men, Batman took a totally different approach with a focus on Art Deco design. It was one of the few shows that had actual orchestra for the music, and it also got voice actors who didn't sound like typical voice actors. They sounded like real people. On top of that, Batman was dark, mixing high-flying action with the psychological drama that the Batman series is infamous for. They didn't always have happy endings, and the bad guys weren't always just bad guys. Sometimes they were ordinary people like you or me, whose lives got destroyed by tragic events. That's not the kind of kids programming most of us are used to. Now that's not to say they didn't have some real baddies either. Characters like the Joker were just as funny and threatening as many of the film renditions. By the way, did you know it's Luke Skywalker playing him? What made Batman so great is that it was its own creation and yet somehow also embodied all the previous incarnations before it. It had the drama from the comic books, the subtleties from the Burton movies, and even a little bit of the camp value from the 60s show and Schumacher films. It seemed like the Batman that combined everything and yet somehow seemed to stand on its own. Its morals were dark, its characters complex, and its endings were not always very cheerful. We took the show seriously because it took us seriously. It never played down to us or lightened the tone because we were kids. It gave us the straight gothic stories that we all know and love. Proof that the legacy of the Dark Knight will always live on. All of this and more is why Batman is the greatest animated nostalgic TV show. I'm a Nostalgia Critic, I remember it, so you don't have to.